eyes run white with desire, the wheels of his Mustang exploding on the highway like a slug from a 45. True death, 400 horsepower of maximum performance, piercing the night. This is Black Sunshine.
I've made a Dean Esmay robot.
I'm sorry, guys. No, you need to go back and learn some basic science. No, there's no one scientific method. It doesn't exist. I reject the idea that I am here making claims.
Why?
I make not a single claim here. I make observations based on my knowledge, and if you wish to, you may politely ask.
You know what? I don't think I'd ever met a genuine misogynist. And given that so many people think that I'm part of the men's rights movement, though I regard myself as an egalitarian who just happens to side with them more because that's the way society has gone. But associating with men's human rights activists, you would think by the popular narrative that I would have run into a lot of misogynists. I haven't. I don't think I've ever met one in my entire life, to be honest. There are plenty of people that get called misogynists, but nobody that actually hates women simply due to the fact that they're women. I don't think I've ever run into anyone like that in my life. Plenty of cranks, plenty of weirdos, plenty of hurt and wounded people, but that can be said just as easily of feminism as it can of men's issues campaigners. But I don't think I'd ever met a genuine misogynist. Until Dean Esmay. I don't know what's happened to Dean. Some sort of brain injury, perhaps. Maybe he was poisoned. Maybe he was replaced by a pod person. He's always been quite vociferous and kind of resentful. I think he's the kind of man that bears a grudge for a long time, but he's never been such an out-and-out arsehole as he has been since this whole escaping atheism project that he's put together. And it seems to be through this that he's found a way to channel his inner cunt, which is kind of ironic, really, given that he is, or at least used to be, a men's rights campaigner. At the moment, this escaping atheism thing is his main project, and it seems to consist mostly of spewing gish gallops of pseudo-intellectual garbage at anyone who will listen, and then giving them abuse at the slightest pushback. And this whole thing seems to be based on a caricature that he has created in his own mind of new atheism. But where those new atheists who are combative tend to be sarcastic, witty, to have, redeeming qualities in that sense, good senses of humour and so on. Dean just has abuse. Abuse is all he has. I mean, there's no intellectual underpinning that would save theism. There's no arguments that he makes that would save theism. It's all your kind of garden variety apologetics that have been debunked for, centuries at this point, to be quite honest. He's defending a decreasing small bubble of theism, and I think traditionalism. I think that's where a lot of his resentment comes in. I think he sees the kind of skeptic and atheist community as it has become engaged in anti-feminism and egalitarian issues. I think he sees that as invasive somehow. Ironically, again, in much the same way that the atheist and skeptic community seems to, in some wings, consider anti-feminism and skepticism towards political ideologies, particularly left-wing ideologies, to be invasive. And again, ironically, similarly to the way in which many in the skeptic and atheist community see the intrusion of social justice warrior politics as being invasive and intrusive. But I think maybe Dean has always had this traditionalist streak to his, what we shall generously call, thinking. And so when the basis for objection to feminism and so on doesn't come from his emotional basis, from his traditionalist basis, when it comes from skepticism, from rationalism, from fact, from examination of the world, he for some reason finds that offensive. And rather than seeing people as allies, he sees them as rivals. I think he has something of a monstrous ego when it comes to these things. He wants to see himself as being in charge. He wants to see himself as being important. And that seems to be what has fueled a particularly vicious resentment that he appears to have developed towards the Honey Badger Brigade. The Honey Badgers are a primarily female-led men's rights activist group. They do very well. They've done a lot of great things. He seems to resent them, though, for a couple of reasons. I think, first, that they've stolen the spotlight from him, and second, that they're women. And that's why I think that Dean is perhaps the first genuine, actual misogynist that I've ever run into. He seems to have a particular hatred for Alison Tiemann, who is about the least offensive, sweetest, quietest, most nervous and non-confrontational person I think I've ever met. Yeah, disclosure, I know the Honey Badger Brigade people. I've been on their podcast and things a few times discussing games and cultural issues, and even though I don't consider myself an MRA, I consider them to be friends. I consider them to be good people. And they've done a lot of fantastic work, and they've raised a lot of issues, and they've built a community. And it's all on the back of their hard work. Sure, they used to work with other people, but people come and go. That's just the natural flow of things. People will end up with incompatible goals. Pick a game project that I've worked on. You know, we don't necessarily agree on everything that we do. That's just the nature of human interaction and cooperation towards a project goal. You know, people come, people go, people split off and do their own thing. It's just the way it goes. But Dean sees this as a personal affront, I think, in the same way that he sees the intrusion of skepticism and rationality and so on into the whole men's issues sphere. He sees that as an intrusion and a stealing of his thunder. Dean wishes he could take credit for their success, I think, and he can't, though he tries to. And I think he does genuinely resent that it's women who've made this big impact, much bigger impact. I never liked A Voice for Men, which is what Dean was more associated with, because they used the same tactics that he seems to be employing in his whole Escaping Atheism project. That is, they seek to draw attention by being deliberately controversial. I know that might seem funny to people who know me and some of the projects that I've worked on, but the way in which they seek to be controversial isn't necessarily because they like controversy or that they genuinely hold views that are controversial, but they're just courting a reaction and hoping that enough people come and check out what they've said and realise what they're actually saying. And it worked. I can't fault them for that. It did work for A Voice for Men, but I think at least the men's issues thing has moved beyond that now. And something like the Honey Badger approach with discussion and debate and reason and fun and comedy and all the other things that they do works. I think he genuinely resents that it's women that have got this success, but it's a sad irony and a truth that when a woman talks about men's issues, she is far more likely to be listened to than a man talking about men's issues. For all she may get dismissed as a gender traitor or whatever else, nonetheless, a woman like Alison, like any of the other Honey Badgers, due to the sheer fact of her gender, is more likely to be listened to, particularly by other women, and that the whole apparatus around feminism in government, in local government, in charities, in organisations, are far more likely to listen to a woman talk about these issues than they are a man. And that's just a sad truth, and we should be grateful that they are willing to speak up about these things. But Dean can't see that. All Dean sees is women, and he doesn't think they should be speaking on men's issues. He's not an egalitarian, and I think his offence towards the atheist skeptic wing that's come into this men's issues thing is because he's a traditionalist, I think. And that's just not compatible with men's issues, society, anything moving forward. He has no real arguments against the Honey Badgers, just as he has no real arguments for theism. He is a sad, washed up, pathetic, potentially brain damaged individual. So why do I keep talking about him? Well, Escaping Atheism, for whatever reason, has more traction. Probably a lot of hate follows. More traction than I do. And I feel like so long as they're doing that, so long as he has this little gang of suck-ups and pseudo-intellectuals, I think it gives a new impetus to me to make the atheist argument, to push back against what he's trying to do, to show him up for the idiot that he is. I think plenty of other people need to do that. I think there needs to be something of a refocus, because he's right about one thing, at least. The whole nationalism thing is tied into religion. The whole Christian identity thing against the Muslims or against the evils of secular society. There is a pushback of that sort, and that needs to be, in turn, pushed back again, because we know how nationalism and faith and traditionalism end up, and it's not in a very good place at all. Zang.
Paris.